All right, I already mentioned the types of digestion, but let me go into them in a little bit more detail. Mechanical digestion is when you take large food particles and break them into smaller food particles physically. You do that with chewing in the mouth, churning of smooth muscle in the stomach wall, the action of a chemical or a collection of chemicals called bile, which takes large fat droplets and breaks them into smaller fat droplets. And then you've got a form of churning in the intestines called segmentation. All of those physical actions can break apart food particles into smaller pieces. With mechanical digestion, we are not breaking bonds, chemical bonds. We are simply breaking large particles into smaller particles. Chemical digestion is when you actually break chemical bonds. So that's when we ultimately get down to monomers. So our foods that we intake are polymers, they're large molecules, also called macromolecules. And we're going to do a process called hydrolysis to actually break chemical bonds and get down to monomers or building blocks. In the lower right corner you can see a diagram of hydrolysis. The name translates to water cutting. And you'll notice a water molecule is added to a covalent bond. You will destabilize and break the covalent bond, and then the components of the water molecule will then be used to stabilize the two separate pieces of molecules. So hydrolysis literally translates to cutting with water. Lys means to cut, and hydra means water. And you'll note that the first thing you do when you put food in your mouth, aside from chew it, is add water to it in the form of saliva so that you can begin chemical digestion. And that does in fact start in the mouth. So chemical digestion does start right there in the mouth. So when we do chemical digestion, we need to take polysaccharides, such as a starch or a grain of some kind, and break them down into monosaccharides, which are sugars. We need to take large proteins, for example, from soy products like tofu or from animal products like meat. And we're going to take those proteins and break them down into their component parts called amino acids. We're going to take fats and break them down into their component parts called monoglycerides and fatty acids. Fats can come in the form of animal products like the fat found in, say, meat, or from plant products such as olive oil or any kind of vegetable oil. And then we're going to take nucleic acids, which would be DNA and RNA. Anything you eat that used to be alive would contain cells containing nuclei, which would contain DNA and RNA. And you can actually take those nucleic acids and break them down into their component nucleotides, and then use those nucleotides for your own purposes to build your own DNA and RNA. All right, some terms that we use with respect to digestion are motility, secretion, and transport. So let me just emphasize what each of those are. Motility means movement. We're going to move food all along the way from mouth to anus, and those muscular, mostly smooth muscle contractions will help us to not only move the food, but mechanically break it up. Motility also allows for mixing of chemical enzymes with the food. So motility even assists with chemical digestion. Secretion is the notion that we secrete digestive enzymes. That is going to happen all along the GI tract, starting in the mouth. Saliva would be a secretion that includes digestive enzymes. The wall of your stomach also does secretion, and then you've got a lot of secretion that takes place right at the beginning point of the small intestine in the duodenum or duodenum. And then we need to do some kind of transport to get nutrients to be absorbed into our blood. So membrane transport involves the movement of nutrients from our digestive tract, from our GI tract, into our blood. And to leave the GI tract and go into a blood vessel, you are, of course, going to have to move the nutrients across membranes. The type of transport varies depending on the type of food particle being moved. All right, we can classify our digestive organs into one of two categories. They are either part of the GI tract, also called the alimentary canal, which is that long hollow tube extending from mouth to anus, or the organs are classified as accessory or add-on organs, meaning they are outside the GI tract. That would include things like your teeth and your tongue, various salivary glands, and then some organs that are outside the GI tract like your liver and gallbladder and your pancreas.